Perfect. So we'll get started in three, two, one. Welcome back to Walk with TB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial, eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people, centered on the intersection of internationalization and sport. Today's conversation is pretty dope, and one I've been looking forward to even when we first met, and I know we'll get into it in a second. But just given where sport is across the United States and really the world at this point, and how the world, well, the United States and North America will be welcoming the world, there's no better person, from my perspective, to talk to about Bay Area Host Committee in the World Cup. But again, we'll get there because without further ado, y'all help me welcome Gabby Turner to the Walk with TAB podcast. What's up, Gabby?
How's it going, Tim? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation today.
I'm excited too, Gabby, because I think when one thing I learned during research, right, is that one of your first, well, not your first, my first moment watching soccer, major moments, was 2010. And I vividly remember the Vuvuzelas on TV, waking up. I cannot wait until the World Cup is in the United States. You
Yes,
mentioned the 2010 segment one of your story.
yes,
You mentioned 2010, you went in person.
yes.
I want to start us there before we come back a little bit. Just
I
talk to
love
us.
it.
What was it about? Like, what was it like? Please tell me.
I I love that we're starting there because and I'll try not to make the story too long because it's amazing how life really comes full circle so many times, and we'll probably kind of hit on that a couple times in this conversation. But it's such a good place to start. Yeah, long story short, I met a guy, and it turns out he's now my husband. So fast forward many years later. Um, and my husband and I met in San Francisco right before the World Cup in 2010. And he is originally from Uruguay.
Mhm.
He has a similar background to I do, where like I actually grew up in Mexico City until I was 5. Then I moved to Philadelphia. We'll get into my twin sister and why I'm so competitive. I think that's part of the reason that you maybe have learned in your research as well,
Mhm.
getting to know me. Um, but my husband and I met in San Francisco in 2010, just before the World Cup, and about a month or so into us dating, he said, um, "Why don't you come to South Africa for the World Cup?" And I said, "That's crazy. We've only been dating for like a month." But as it turns out, his friend had dropped out,
Uh-huh.
and so he was looking for someone to take the ticket, and we had just started dating, and just here's the life advice of like, there's no better way to see if you're compatible with somebody than if you go travel with them. So I said, I thought I really liked him, and then we went on this trip, and it turns out we're really good travel companions. So I have a lot of really fun photos from that time too. Of We really just chased Uruguay, which is a country in South America. I am from Mexico originally, so both of us speak Spanish and have sort of a similar. He moved to the States when he was 5, um, or 4, and then so we have sort of similar path. But I didn't know much about Uruguay. I sure learned a lot on that trip. I have a lot of pictures of us in Uruguay, face paint, interacting there in South Africa. But what's come to bear now, many years later, now here we are 2026 with the FIFA World Cup coming to the Bay Area and me working at the Bay Area Host Committee, is the biggest takeaway, besides the fact that I did end up marrying that guy, and now we have 2 kids and we live in the Bay Area, that whole story, um, was really the opportunity to experience, the biggest, most diverse global event in the world in a time where South Africa was actually in a very similar position to what the Bay Area has been in the last couple of years, where like maybe didn't have the best reputation, people were nervous a little bit politically. Um, and For me, I think as a fan and just somebody who professionally has also been to a number of events and been involved in sports and stuff for a long time, it was just the feeling of everybody was a host there. So like whether it was, the person collecting your fare at the bus or at the train or at the convenience store or your Airbnb, which was pretty new back then, or your hotel, you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff people really took and they really wanted to show the best of South Africa. So I think people put aside some differences during that time that allowed it to just be a really amazing, joyous celebration. And I think that's what's so unique about the World Cup is that you just have all these different countries coming together, and there's nothing like sports to be sort of this great unifier. But like, I have nothing to do. I've never hung out with Team Holland before, and we were like partying with Team Holland at their watch party, and we had a great time. And then we were hanging out with like Team Ghana over here before the match, and people were taking pictures with my husband, and they're holding their big Uruguayan flags. And Uruguay ended up a surprise fourth in the World Cup, this little tiny mighty country. So people were sort of enamored with Uruguay and Forlan and us, all those players at the time too. So. It was definitely a great time and like life lessons, um, marriage and kids, global sporting event now transitions and teaches me a lot in my daily work. And like, like I said, everything kind of comes full circle.
It does come full circle, and I love that story. And I hope that one day I can go to a World Cup outside of the United States, to be honest. But again, I vividly remember those vuvuzelas, and I don't know why that sticks to me so much, but
It's funny that you started with that because I can literally still hear them.
yes.
I can still hear them in my ear. That is a sound unlike any other. So if we, I don't know, I probably should know what the in-stadium policy is going to be on that stuff.
I'm
But
crying,
man,
yo.
people have no idea. I mean, what it's like. Soccer. I'm so excited for the United States. It's been a long time since we've had the World Cup. It
Hmm.
will be a great unifier for the States as well. People, though, I mean, international global soccer is a whole other level. So I'm
It
excited
is.
for that spirit to come here.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned 2010 being a formative experience, obviously, for your life. But I
Hmm.
want to take us back to Mexico City and ask you a question about one of your earlier experiences with sport, period. Whether that's watching a sport, playing a sport. Talk to us like one of the first moments of sport that like really stands out to you as far as like, like what is this thing?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I have a lot of sports allegiances, like being born in Mexico, the Mexico national team, and then I moved to Philadelphia when I was 5 years old, and so I am a diehard Philadelphia everything sports fan, and that probably I will say if you ask people in their that are probably maybe 35 and above. They spent a lot of their younger years like tortured Philly sports fans that grew up there. And so my first actual life lesson as a sports fan about how it really brings people together and also kind of the joy and pain of sports is watching the Phillies lose the World Series to the Expos when Joe Carter hit a home run off Mitch Williams, and people were just crying everywhere. I mean, like people were crying in the stadium. Mitch Williams couldn't come back to Philadelphia for a long time. I say that story because it has very little to do with like kind of global sports, but it was my first experience. And I actually, when I went to grad school at USF many years later, wrote an essay about that was my first real experience. I think I was, a late elementary school where I really started to understand kind of the importance of sports and how people live and die by it. And when you really, it's like a religion for a lot of people, and it's so important to so many of us. And feeling the joy, the moment of that joy where you're so excited, and then the pain a second later, where like, and that's happened to so many of us,
Yeah.
right? I can name so many times that that's happened to me too since being a Philadelphia sports fan. And then, as you know, Tim, I'm also a huge Stanford sports fan too. So I also have memories. I mean, some of my best memories are when Stanford was at its worst. I mean, when I was actually at the USC game when Tavita Pritchard, the now
Yeah.
current coach of the Stanford football team, threw that touchdown and we beat USC when it was the biggest upset ever at that time. And so that was a moment of like, there's no way we're going to win. Kind of like the pain was here and then all of a sudden the joy 2 seconds later. Um, having all those different experiences, I think started teaching me just the passion behind sports and the meaning behind that and what it does for people emotionally and so on.
I love that. Before we jump into segment two, I want to come back to Mexico for a number of different reasons. One, because I might practice my Spanish with you at some point during this
Muy
conversation.
bien.
See,
Vámonos.
I might, I might. But two, you always mention Mexico City, right? It's in your
Yeah,
bio, it's always in your
yeah,
introduction. You
yeah.
mentioned Mexico City till five, Philly thereafter, Philly area thereafter. Talk to us about Mexico City. What
Yeah.
makes it special? What makes it different? Why is it important and core to who you are and your story?
Yeah, I won't tell people you're asking because you want just taco recommendations because I know that you'll be going there soon. But uh, Mexico, man, I mean, I could go on for a long time. Mexico is such a special place, and it's amazing. it's a country that is really rooted on soccer, and football as a global sport, and it has been for a long time. And the Mexico women's team and the men's team has been a little bit like this, and we've had some kind of star folks here and there too. It's just awesome to see. On the one hand, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be a big challenge. People don't realize like the World Cup is North America. It's not just the United States, it's North America, which means Canada, our wonderful neighbors to the north,
Yep.
and Mexico, our wonderful neighbors to the south, and the United States. So people are going to be traveling all throughout. And for Mexico to also have this moment right now, I think is amazing because people are going to be able to see, just like they will here in the Bay Area, like what makes Mexico special. And some of that is its people. The people in Mexico are so warm. The food. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people go, it's going to be summer, it's going to be hot, but the weather's going to be good. Sneak down to the beach in Mexico, like you won't regret it. And I think it has such a rich cultural history. And so that experience that Mexico has will be very different than the experience that people will have in the United States and will be very different than the experience that people have in Canada. So really exciting, I think, for Mexico. Also, like proudly during a time where there is a female president in Mexico. Some people don't totally agree with her politics, but for me personally, it's great to see. Never did I think that we'd have a female president in Mexico before many other countries, but it's just a proud moment for me to see, and I'm excited for Mexico to show off a little bit. It may not be on the field. I'm rooting for the national team. It may not be on the field, but I think Mexico, and I hope they do and get out as far as they can. And I have my Mexico jersey I just bought, but I think Mexico will be able to show off for sure too.
I love that. Did you go to the Gold Cup game at Levi's last summer or last summer?
I went to no, there was it was yeah, the CONCACAF. Well, there was
That
a
one.
CONCACAF Colombia Brazil game.
Yep.
I was at that game. Yeah, I was at that game, and that game was crazy.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. I love football. Segment two. All right, we're here to talk about the World Cup, and this conversation will drop and will be released 100 days out from the FIFA Men's World Cup. Emphasis on the men's, obviously. Women's 2031. Cannot wait.
Yes.
Cannot wait. And one thing I learned probably over the last few months was that MLS, I'm a big MLS fan. I know a lot of people watch Premier League, La Liga, whatever, but it's in the United States. I'm going to watch. And I did not know that MLS was founded as a promise to host the World Cup in the States back in '96.
Hmm.
Recognizing that now, you mentioned obviously this World Cup 2026 across North America, but obviously the
Yep.
United States is part of that. What does it mean that 30 years later now hosts the largest sporting event in the world and seeing where MLS has come from since '96, seeing how obviously women's soccer and NWSL in particular is growing, especially with the Columbus franchise, 205 million,
Yeah.
insane,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When we talk about the World Cup, that's definitely an event and a spectacle for sure.
Yeah.
But just soccer, football in general in the States, how have you seen it grow?
Yeah. I mean, this is a great question and one that, man, there's so much to say about it. First of all, like when that happened back in 1996, like this is when I was, just starting my freshman year of college, and there was no professional women's sports wasn't really even a thing then, which is crazy now because of so much that has happened in this, especially the last few years, and the options that college women athletes especially have these days that were not even available. So that trajectory is a whole other conversation, which has been amazing. And there's still a lot more to go there, of course. But I think with your question of like the landscape of soccer has changed. I think the hope was then MLS was going to start, and it knew that it was going to be a challenge in the US because it wasn't as developed, obviously, as South America and, the EPL and La Liga and Bundesliga, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and soccer is the world's global sport, and the US is just fundamentally behind, right? And so I think it took a lot of people there it takes a lot of people. It tells you the story of like, it takes a lot of initiative to bring together something that is such a collaborative effort to get off the ground, whether that is hosting a World Cup in your country, so that relates to that, or whether it is starting that MLS league, which did not exist, right? And now you fast forward many years later, here we are, 2026. Some of those MLS franchise, well, MLS has grown tremendously. Yes, it's kind of maybe gone a little bit slower in some cases, but now the last couple of years, I don't think anybody would have told you. I think the hope was that like a Messi would come.
Hmm.
The hope was that it was come, but I think there was a lot of years, if you really asked people in the business of soccer, if they thought that we were going to get to a point where it not only was a Messi is coming, but several members of from different clubs, European clubs and stuff that are like, you look at LAFC and you look at some of the other teams too, right? Starting to really court these players, and these players now want to come because the level of soccer and what they can get, the exposure and so on, is now there for them in a way that it just wasn't, right? It just wasn't. So, like, it's really great to see. Do we have a long way to go? I think there's a whole conversation about youth sports where there's a lot of people vocal about youth sports and like how that needs to be redone. And hey, maybe now with the World Cup coming here, we're certainly going to see another peak of
Absolutely.
interest, excitement, celebration, participation. And again, back to kind of the youth sports. I mean, the goal is like soccer with kids, especially, I mean, get out there and toss a ball around. You never know what's going to happen. And to be able to then take that into the communities, and drive that excitement, I think is something that like we're all going to see in every corner of the Bay Area,
Yep.
and so on, right? So that's what's really exciting. And by the way, I just have to shout out, like, I have a colleague who worked at the earthquakes, and we know a lot of people with earthquakes, and the earthquakes are at the top of the leaderboard in MLS on their end right now, which is just never happened here. And so, boy, I couldn't think of better timing for the earthquakes to decide to be really darn good leading up to the World Cup here in the Bay Area.
I hope they
So,
continue it through the break, man. I really
oh
do.
yeah,
They've been playing well. Lights
yes,
out.
they have. Yes, they have. So let's go earthquakes.
Let's go Quakes. So we mentioned obviously 96, important. Beckham coming to the States, I think another important moment.
Right.
Messi deal with Apple TV, another important moment. But
Yes.
nonetheless, again, the World Cup, right? Spectacle, largest event in the world, sporting event in the
Yes.
world. And somehow, some way, they asked some group of people in the Bay Area to figure out how to host it? Question mark.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Talk
listen,
about
like I'll give you the quick story there because it's really interesting, and one of the things that makes the Bay Area Host Committee unique is our makeup, and kind of it kind of comes to that story of how this all came about. And I take zero credit for it because it's really our board and our CEO Zaleen John Mohammed who started this new sort of what I would consider 2.0 version of the host committee. And for anybody who's watching or listening who is a Bay Area person, there was a host. Super Bowl 50 was here 10 years ago. It's crazy because some people are like, oh my God, that was 10 years ago. But it was 10 years ago the Super Bowl 50 was in the Bay Area. 10 years is a long time for a major global sporting event to not come back to the region. In the meantime, and I know I alluded to this with when we talked a little bit about South Africa, the Bay Area has gone through some trying times in the last like several years, right? We have COVID, the narrative around San Francisco and the media attention that we're getting is largely negative, um, and we're not doing ourselves any favors, as far as being able to attract more of those global events. Again, sport is one vertical, obviously conferences, even conferences, tech conferences, we were starting to suffer, all that stuff. And if you looked at the rankings of the Bay Area, it was just going further and further down the list of cities or regions most attractive to host big conferences, global events, et cetera, you name it, right? Not a good trajectory. And Thankfully for our board, which is made up of all the team presidents, so 49ers, Earthquakes, Sharks, San Francisco Giants, Bay FC, et cetera, Valkyries, et cetera. Um, you know, the board got together, and a lot of credit to Al Guido, who is the CEO of the 49ers too, and Elevate, and said, there was no longer a host committee when Super Bowl 50 happened. That host committee was created to stand up Super Bowl 50. Then there was no Super Bowl 50, no other event coming. There was nothing to keep a host committee here. And so the idea was like, we need this centralized organization in the Bay Area to bring these events, to advocate for us, to bring these events, to execute these events, and ultimately create this sustainable impact that's going to be good for the region and it like lifts all boats idea, right? These global events aren't just, the matches on the field, like they're really there to stimulate and accelerate the local economy, to provide local jobs, to get into the communities and drive impact with youth, to help raise awareness for sustainability, so on and so forth. There's so much richness underneath it all, and that's really the story of how this came about. So, long story short, they all kind of got together and said, like, let's reform this host committee. They hired our CEO. In that process, the bids were starting to come up for these major events, and I don't know the full story because I wasn't in the room, but somehow they convinced somebody. They convinced the NBA, they convinced the NFL, and they convinced FIFA that only the Bay Area Host Committee and the Bay could host back to back to back global events. So we had just a year ago, we had the NBA All-Star Game here for the first time in a long time. We obviously had Super Bowl 60 here, which was, in our opinion, a wild success, and hopefully people felt that here in the Bay Area. It was so awesome, and thank you to the weather gods. But we had that Super Bowl 60 here in February. Shout out, I guess, to the Seattle Seahawks for winning. Uh, and now we're culminating this trifecta of big global events with the FIFA World Cup here this summer in 2026. And we snuck in also the NWSL made a decision partway through to have the NWSL um, matches here too in November. So we were lucky and fortunate to have that. So it's been quite a run of events. And that's how it works is you need a centralized figure, to be able to bring that level of attention, to be able to bid for those events, to be able to stand up an organization that can actually execute. That's a real hard part too. We've been able to stand up an organization. We're only 20 people. We've got people from like all different expertise that many of us have been in the Bay Area a long time that like care very deeply about giving back to the Bay Area. And so this job is can be really fun because we're dealing with a lot of stuff. It's really hard work. It's a hustle every single day, but I think all of us would tell you that we raise our hands because we really care so much about the region, and this is great for the entire Bay Area.
I mean, it's definitely once in a lifetime. I think you mentioned in a previous interview, right? This may never and probably will never happen again as far as Super Bowl, World Cup,
Yeah.
same.
That's right. And that's a really good data point, Tim. It's never before has
Mhm.
any major region hosted the two biggest global sporting events, and by that, that's the Super Bowl and the World Cup. Um, has anyone hosted in the same calendar year? That's never happened before, and it will never happen again. So, um, I mean, LA actually is another market we have to give a shout out to LA. LA actually has done a really good job. They've got obviously they have an organization like ours called LASIK that is standing up Super Bowl, working on World Cup. They also are gonna have they just had the All-Star game. They're gonna have Super Bowl next year. So it's actually a great story for California. We've had a run of events here in the Bay Area. We have a run of events in LA. We've got the Olympics coming in 28 down in LA. So it's a California story.
It's a California story, and I'm glad we're going to stay here for a second because I'm not from California, and neither are you.
Yeah.
I've been in California now 2 years, it's a few months. And something about the Bay Area host committee I have a question about, right?
Yes.
It's more so about the Bay Area region because since I've been here, well, and just enjoy watching sports, we've seen the Raiders go to Vegas.
Hmm.
Seen athletics, they plan a set, they're gonna be in Vegas. We've seen the Warriors leave the town and go across the street, right? And so
Yes.
within the Bay, at least from just talking to other people, fans who've been here a while, it's like, yo, it feels divided in some ways. Like, why are my teams leaving this city, going to this city, etc. But the Bay Area Host Committee, in many ways, is trying to unite the Bay Area, right? And in this event in particular, through sport, a sport that is, sorry, through soccer, a sport that is not, well embraced in the Bay for
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah.
global, United States, not so much.
Yeah.
As someone who lives in Oakland, I rock with Oakland heavy. Like, just talk to me more
Yeah.
about either the tension and or the conversation that you have
Ooh.
as like, how does this committee gather, unite us while also recognizing there's some feelings about teams leaving and going
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Man, I love this question and it like really hits me kind of deep because I moved to so I've lived all over the Bay Area. I went to Stanford for undergrad, so I've been sort of technically on the peninsula there for a long time. Lots of love for that area too. I lived in San Francisco for 18 years, and now I've been in Oakland for almost 9 years. And I moved to Oakland right when all that stuff was happening. I was like, wait a minute, I just moved here and like the Raiders going to Las Vegas. The A's is a whole tragedy of a story too. I've heard some rumors that had the Raiders known that the A's were going to depart that quickly afterwards, they may have actually decided to stay. And so there's been a lot of heartbreak, I would say, in particular in Oakland. And Oakland is a city that has just so much pride and diversity and culture, and it's just got so many different things. But it also has seen its share of struggles in the last several years as far as crime, and we're right in the middle of the narrative that people have had about the Bay Area over several years. And I think we're starting to rewrite that narrative here in Oakland, um, largely because one, we have a new mayor, Barbara Lee, who has done, I think, a very good cleanup effort. She's been able to trail some of um, the headwinds from the mayor in San Francisco, Mayor Daniel Lurie, who's also doing like an excellent job in San Francisco. Having that trifecta of like that political, right? That we don't really have a whole lot to do. We work a lot with city governments. We are obviously not dictating anything that they're doing, but that having the power of mayors across the region in San Jose, Santa Clara, Oakland, San Francisco, et cetera, and having that sort of regional coalition is really important too during this time. Um, and I think the Bay Area Host Committee and these events are a forcing function. I mean, they are just really, at the end of the day, they are a forcing function for collaboration. And Yes, I mean, you can say that about Oakland. I would say like other parts of the region feel similarly of like whether they lost a sports team or otherwise, they feel some sort of sense of loss, in the last several years. COVID just did a lot of things to a lot of people here. It was a real, it was in some ways, I think some really great things came out of it, but it was a very difficult time, still is. People are recovering. Don't think it helped the Oakland sports teams at all. The Oakland sports teams have rebounded in a way, in a small way, I would say, with the Ballers, which is a nice story here, with the Oakland Roots, which I mean are so much fun to watch. If people have not gone out to see the Oakland Roots, you need to go out and see them. The love of soccer that's here with Bay FC and the Earthquakes too is great. So there is a sense of the Bay Area Host Committee. These events are this forcing function, this regional unifier. Because it really is a time for like kind of all of us. So it's not being hosted yeah, the games themselves are going to be at Levi Stadium, but it's not just Santa Clara, it's not just San Francisco, it's not just Oakland, it's not just San Jose, it's the entire Bay Area that gets to participate in this moment. And we're here, to bear through. Look, there's a lot of challenges with it. We're here to bear through the challenges of it as the host committee. But at the end of the day, I think, yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to like just bring people together to really, you see, I mean, you've done your research, Tim, like, our mission really is uniting the Bay Area through sport. And that comes by fruition of these large events and the forcing function, but it also is politically, it's our entire ecosystem. It's our board. All the team presidents have to sit at a table during board meetings with each other. You know what I mean? So like,
I would pay for a ticket to be in that room.
totally. So, I mean, it's a great, there we bring people in a room together that are normally not in a room together. It's politics, it's business, it's tech, it's the sports world. Everybody kind of coming together, because that's what it takes to pull this stuff off.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there being a spike, right? Projected spike in football, soccer participation. I agree. I think this is also an inflection point, cherry on top, if you will, for the Bay Area to come together and begin to tell a new story moving forward through
Yeah,
the Cup hosting. So my
yeah,
question to you is, what story do you want the Bay Area to tell through these next 100 and so days as we get to and through FIFA Men's
yeah,
World?
yeah. I mean, technically, we have 49 days until it starts.
Crazy.
So, which is crazy. But I think, you know, I'll tell another story too that I'm going to give another shout out to Al Guido because he came into a Barry Host Committee staff meeting of ours, um, probably like a month before Super Bowl. Like when things get, I never worked for a host committee before. I did not know what a host committee did. We are like we do all the things. We get our hands dirty. We are like literally like the interns, and we are also the senior strategists like on the team because we're such a small, scrappy organization. And where I've learned it gets really real now, having been through the NBA All-Star Game, the Super Bowl, and now heading into, is really like the month before. Like you're hitting that rubber meets the road. The planning is all for the most part done. There's kind of open items, of course, things, that we don't need to get into, but are really important. Number one important thing is safety and security, and the host committee has a lot to do with that as well too, keeping our region safe and working collaboratively to make sure that that happens. Um, but again, at the end of the day, I think the story, well, anyway, so Al came in about a month before the Super Bowl, and he gave us, what I would say is like a really good underlines the story kind of in the wrong way. Like it wasn't a pep talk. It was better than a pep talk, but it was kind of a pep talk. And he just sort of came in and he sort of reminded people of like a little bit of the question you're asking, Tim, which was like when you fast forward and you think about like, okay, the Super Bowl, you're about to head, it's a month away. When you fast forward and you say, okay, now it's been 2 months since the Super Bowl, or a month after the Super Bowl, or a week after the Super Bowl, what do you want those headlines to be? Like, think about what is the headline on the newsprint, right? The next day or the next week. And I would say a couple of things that we want to see. Number one, I think all of us personally also feel this way. Number one is that it had a positive impact on the Bay Area. And so that might mean like the economic impact was, we're hoping that it's between maybe 400 million, 500 million for the Bay Area for Super Bowl, which is really amazing, right? So you're talking about hotel nights and more bookings for restaurants and um, more jobs and so on and so forth. And for World Cup, hopefully, again, it'll be bigger than that. And so that one of our KPIs for the host committee was we wanted to drive, and we estimated to drive, I think, 1.4 billion in economic impact through these three events, back-to-back events. So the NBA All-Star Game, the Super Bowl, and then the FIFA.
You said billion with a B? Billion?
A billion with a B, 1.4 billion in
My
economic
goodness.
impact. So like that is amazing, right? And so I think that's the top headline that you want to see is, and there's been some really positive news articles coming out of Super Bowl. So that's kind of like your first key indicator. We have some stats from NBA All-Star Game again that are really positive too. But that's the headline that you want to see is that the Bay Area has accelerated its recovery. The Bay Area is here. The Bay Area is back. The Bay Area is thriving because not only because of what we're doing, but again, like, you know, we're just a piece of it, right? Like we're just a piece of like the sort of the gasoline that's sort of regenerating the Bay Area in this new moment that we're in. So I think that's the number one headline that we want to see. And then I think with that, the other headline that we want to see is that there's just participation and celebration all over the Bay Area. That's really it. We are not, people read the news about FIFA. There's a lot of complaints about tickets. We have nothing to do with the tickets. Yes, there's a lot of confusion about who's doing what with fan zones, how to fit, where are the watch parties going to be in the Bay Area. There's going to be we're spreading it out. Like we are not going to have one FIFA Fan Fest that is open the duration of the tournament. It did not make sense for the Bay Area for a variety of reasons. A lot of host cities are not doing that. But what we are doing is really working across the region, and that means 9 counties and 10 if you include the county of Santa Cruz to enable watch parties and or fan zones, which are bigger watch parties, and bars and restaurants to be able to promote the fact that they're hosting a watch party or fan zone or that they're just showing the games and they just want to know like what can I if I what level of participation can I go in and what can I say, like they're just looking for guidance, right? They're looking for like I want to put this stuff on, what can I put on my tabletops at my bar? Can I say FIFA World Cup? No. Yes, you can in some instances, no you can in some others. The Bay Area Host Committee is here to help you with that guidance. We have all of that, so we work a lot across the region, whether it is the destination marketing organizations like SF Travel, Visit Oakland, etc., to help enable that conversation with all those businesses, and also city government. We also work across the transit agencies, and so we're working to be that sort of facilitator, if you will, so that like everybody can participate in a way that they can feel confident and compliant, so they can follow the rules that FIFA has. And there are some rules that FIFA has around IP and so on and so forth. But like that's what we're here to do is to help enable that participation in a level that people can do because this is a moment of celebration. So that's the headline that we want to see is that there were watch parties all over the Bay Area. Whether you were down in Santa Cruz, whether you're up in Sonoma, in the East Bay, San Francisco, down in Stanford, etc., you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna be away for most of it, unfortunately. But July 1, I plan on doing something if I'm not in the stadium. It's either
Right
I'm a
on.
party, I'm doing something. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but July 1,
Okay.
I'm doing something.
Right on. Yeah.
I got you. But I like this conversation, and I enjoy the World Cup in particular because yes, the games will be played. Yes, there will be storylines and unsung heroes, if you will, that score goals and last minute extra time, whatever. But I think it also humanizes it to your point, right? The people within the community, but also people like yourself who are getting to do this work, well, which is a blessing, I'm sure. And so I keep mentioning the 2010 experience I had with the Vuvuzelas, but obviously you're a parent now, two children of yourself. This is a big moment. I can
Yeah.
imagine. I'm not a parent
Yeah.
yet, but it's a big
Yeah.
moment. And so if you're thinking about running the event from a leadership
Yeah.
standpoint, as a parent, right? Like,
Yeah.
how are you also like either educating, telling them like, yo, pay attention, it's a big deal. This may not ever happen until you're 35, right? Like, how are you, I guess, having that conversation? I'm just curious.
Yeah, Tim. So you're asking some great questions today. Man, so much about parenting. Well, one is
Yeah.
first of all, it's a total privilege to, yes, to be able to be in this position and kind of have this role in this time and place. Uh, um, when I have two boys, they are 12 years old and 8 years old. And they are huge soccer fans. I mean, huge. They teach me. So I don't have to teach them a whole lot from a soccer standpoint. They know way more than I do. My 8-year-old picked up one of the Panini. I mean, my kids are into the Panini books. If you know the Panini sticker books, if you don't know about them, you will know about them at this World Cup because they are awesome output of FIFA and Panini, allows kids to learn all about the rosters of the teams, about geography and world geography. Anyhow, um, listen, as a parent, I think it's really hard to balance like working and being a parent, but luckily my kids are at an age now where they're a little more self-sufficient, and they appreciate sports in a way that they didn't when they were, having a 2-year-old is a very different experience than having a 12-year-old. Now my kids are like psyched and like they're talking about, they're huge EPL fans, and La Liga fans. One of them really loves Real Madrid, and he has his whole Real Madrid kit and stuff. The other one likes Man City, and we have some battles and stuff here. They play soccer, and they both play soccer. My husband is the coach of one of their teams for now. I think this is the last year that he's gonna do it, but I think he's put in his dues for many years. My other one is doing, a competitive soccer league, and he plays for his school, so they love it. So I don't have to teach them anything about that. What I do have to teach them about too, I think, is like, this is that once in a lifetime. Like it's really hard, right? When you're a kid, you're so tunnel vision, like you don't know. Like I think I said this in a panel where I said, if we're going at the same trajectory that we've had the World Cup, like right, the last World Cup was here was in the 90s, right? 94, 99 was the Women's World Cup. You think about that, it's been a long time. It's been 30 plus years, right? If we go in that trajectory, the next time the World Cup will be here, think about how old will you be in 30 years, Tim?
I'll be 63 years old, still
There you
working.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I'll be like, I don't even want to talk about how old I'm gonna be, right? So like, but
All
I'll
the
be
dreams.
I'll be like in my 70s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, so that you got to look at the perspective of this is once in a lifetime. And I think it's easier to appreciate that once you're a more fully formed adult. And with kids, I think it's just, like everything else, it's like a continual learning. Like my kids been able to come and participate in some of the things that we do, so they get a bit of a point of view. I think what I'm trying to teach them is to like be grateful, because they get access to certain things here and there, that a lot of people don't, and so they are able to appreciate, but more to be able to see what like a working mom does and appreciate that. Shout out to all the working moms and dads because it's hard, and so but for them, I think it helps in the challenges to be able to bring your kids along, and I don't have a ton of opportunity to do that, but I do it here and there for just to bring them along, to have them participate, to see a little bit behind the scenes. Um, One of the fun projects that I think I've told you about, Tim, that I that I've done is for the Super Bowl, I had this idea of like it'd be really great to turn Mayor Daniel Lurie into a hologram to welcome people when they arrive for Super Bowl. And long story short, it was a dream of mine for a long time. Made it come to fruition through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and persuasion. And we were able to do over Super Bowl. Holograms at San Francisco airport with the mayor, with Steve Young, and with Jerry Rice, all welcoming people. And now we're working on the next generation of that. So we'll hopefully have Mayor Lurie join us again. And the sneak peek is that we're hopefully going to have Brandy Chastain do one of those too. And so I use my kids. I actually like, I get really down and dirty. Like I write the scripts for a lot of that stuff. So like I will do the creative work on that. And sometimes I'm home by myself. And so yesterday I pulled over my 9-year-old and I said, "Can I read out loud my script?" And so actually I read out loud my script as if I was Brandy Chastain, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he was like, "Well, I think that like maybe you should add this here." And actually he gave me one or two good pointers. So it was more about, it was great to get the pointers, but it was nice to kind of get them a little bit behind the scenes and sort of understand like what mom does here and there.
I love that early resume building. Don't mind it.
Yeah,
No,
totally. I told him that. I was
literally,
like, you're gonna be able to say when you were 9 or 12 that worked on this thing, right?
honestly.
They're gonna have like writer rights or something like that.
Absolutely. Before we go to segment three, follow-up question to that is like, what are you learning about yourself through this journey, right? Through the journey with the committee, definitely through obviously this World Cup. What are you learning about yourself?
I think I've learned a couple of things. Number one, it cements for me always how important relationships are. And it's super fun for the people that you meet along the way. And like you're one of those people, like it's so fun, Tim. Like we met and it was like kind of instant, like we just sort of vibed, and so like you always get this opportunity through these endeavors that you do to meet new and interesting people. And also like I've had many instances with my role. I've been in the host committee just shy of 2 years, and I have worked again with people that I worked with 15 years ago. I've either brought them in or by happenstance, which has been amazing. People that I like have been friends with for most of them I've been friends with since I worked with them in some capacity 15 years ago, stayed friends with them, stayed connected with them. And here we are 15 years later, some cases longer, working together again in 2026 on Super Bowl, on World Cup, whatever. So that's been like a real joy, I think, too. But also like just the continuous learning. I've learned so much in the last 2 years. Um, but more than anything else, like the two things that I sort of like fundamentally believe is like one is that collaboration is essential in an organization, and that trusting your gut is also as you get older, trust your gut. It's a life lesson. I think we all get it now and then where you have this voice and you're like, even now, I think, in my career where you're almost asking for opinions or otherwise and just trust your gut, like trust your gut more than I think maybe you think you need to, but just a continuous learning that voice inside of you is strong and that it's there for a reason. So trust your gut, be open to learning, and I end with one more thing on this too, like back to my geeky Stanford self. Like Stanford, I happened to catch that Stanford GSB put out a research outcome, and it stuck with me. And it's basically said that in cooperative environments, people feel a lot more freedom and motivation in cooperative environments than they do in like competitive environments, right? So competition actually, like I am a very competitive person. So like learning about you know, I think it all is about being a good teammate at the end of the day. I learned that lesson through my whole life, like some from being in high school, middle school, high school athlete. I was a tennis player a lot growing up. I learned that maybe individual sports were not my strength. I sort of I always loved. I played basketball, I played lacrosse, and I played lacrosse, and I realized like the team sports for me was where it was at because of that cooperation, the camaraderie, and all that kind of stuff. And I think I've taken that life lesson into the business world and seeing that sort of Stanford GSB article, that really just says like, you know, people feel more freedom, they feel more motivation when people are cooperative, and that leads to greater output and better results. That's a pretty cool thing to see, and I think it really resonated, especially now when we're about to have a event at this scale here. Because in reality, the only way something like that can happen is because of sheer collaboration, like at every single level.
Absolutely. You said you drop individual sports, but aren't you an aspiring pickleball professional? That's still a
Yes,
thing?
but usually you play
Oh,
doubles,
okay.
so
Okay.
like,
All right.
it's not all on you. If something bad happens, I just blame my partner.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Segment three. I know support for the World Cup, it looks different, of course, with FIFA's involvement. So that's not my question for this episode. Instead, my question is, how can we best show up for you and the host committee over the next 50 or so
Yeah.
days?
I think the best way to show up is just to really, it sounds cheesy, but like really just embrace the moment, embrace this moment of unity. I think my number one ask for people, if you are in the Bay Area, but really at any host city, is we all kind of share responsibility. Like, the Bay Area Host Committee is technically the host, but I would argue like we're all hosts. Like when someone is coming to your home, show them a good time. And that might mean like you open the door for them when they're like walking into Starbucks. That might mean that you're helping somebody with directions, or pointing them to the right BART, to go to. There's going to be a lot of people coming. There's 5 continents coming. There's, depending on how you count them, there's 8 different languages coming. Um, People are going to be traveling all over the Bay Area, hopefully, really seeing and appreciating the like kind of diverse landscape that we have. Public transportation is going to be a big deal here in a way that for Super Bowl it's not it just wasn't widely used as much. It's also a much more consolidated time. And so I think the biggest ask is for people to like participate in whatever way they can. That if that means that like you're just kind of helping people out along the way because you happen to spot, somebody who is from Team Switzerland and they don't know where they're going and you are helping them along, that's awesome. And if you are going to one of the fan zones or watch parties in San Jose or San Francisco, like go have fun and celebrate and tell people about it. If you're excited about the World Cup, like, and you are a social media person, like put your excitement up. Like right now we've got a little bit of time left, here, but really, like, we're going to hit that 30-day mark pretty soon. That's going to be on May 12th. That's going to be a day of celebration. Like, there's a lot of people that don't know the World Cup is coming to the Bay. Like, now it's a time for people to start getting excited. So those are my asks. Help get people excited. And when people are here, just be a good host.
I love this diplomacy 101 too. I like that.
Yeah.
Sports diplomacy 101. Well, Gabby, it's been a pleasure. And I'm glad you trusted your gut to come to Stanford years ago, because otherwise,
Yeah,
I'm glad I trusted mine too, I guess. Otherwise, we would never met. But
true.
I appreciate not only your time, but also your leadership and vision, not just with sport, but in depth, but health committee, but just who you are as a person. I think this conversation, though, I had a lot of different ideas in regards to which direction it could go. I'm glad it went in the direction it did. I think again, it
Yeah.
humanizes what's actually happening right now, which I think many times we don't get to do until after the fact. And so doing it before, get to watch it during, and then have it after, I think it's gonna be a beautiful moment for us to celebrate for years to come.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to talk again when it's all over and we can talk about what actually happened. But Tim, everything kind of happens for a reason too. So, right, like, yeah, I'm glad I trusted my gut. I was lucky that I got into Stanford in the first place. But I'm really happy that thank you for whoever did that. So I feel a lot of pride, obviously, in Stanford, and so happy I got to meet you through the Stanford platform, if you will. Um, and yeah, just really enjoyed it, right? So much fun to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Real quick, will you get to be a fan at all in any capacity? Can you
I hope
participate?
so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. My number one priority is to make sure that this event, whatever I need to do for the host committee, that it goes off, without a hitch, and that the Bay Area gets to celebrate. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to sneak my head. We actually have some tickets through the
Good.
lottery. We don't even need to go through the ticketing conversations, but we actually have a few tickets through that too. So my husband and my kids will be able to come down and
Good.
celebrate as well. And yeah, so I definitely, and you never know, maybe I'll show up incognito and face paint somewhere. Could happen. We'll relive 2010 again in
Yeah, I can't wait to
2026.
I can't wait to crash some fan parties in SF in Oakland for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's gonna be a lot of fun. So people get on board. Pick a team. If you don't have a team, don't pick one. Pick a few. Pick a
yeah,
few.
there you go. Pick a few.
Pick
Give
a
me
few. Pick a few, get on board. I'll say we've got quite a slate. We have some fun teams coming. I think it's going to be a vibe here in the Bay Area too. We've got a really diverse set of teams coming too, which we're excited about. So, but there's going to be watch parties for everything, right? Like, so it's just that we've got the 6 games at Levi's, but there'll be watch parties for Team USA, Team Mexico, whatever it is. There's going to be watch parties everywhere, so everybody's going to have a chance to celebrate and have a good time.
I cannot wait. Well, hopefully we'll have this conversation again 2031 when the Bay Area is a host.
Let's hope so.
I'm praying, man. Gabby, thank you again for your time today.
Yes, you
Uh,
bet.
Everyone else, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Walk with TFB. I'll be sure to drop Gabby's information, the Bay Area host information in the podcast description today. But as always, until then, be walking. Peace out.